Hello, Dr. Norton here with writing tip for week 6. 5 types of evidence. First one, anecdotal. Second one, authorities as evidence. Third one, empirical evidence. Fourth, experimental evidence. And fifth, textual evidence. So for anecdotal, an anecdote is a little story, a narrative, right? A piece of experience. The word comes from a Greek term meaning things unpublished. Anecdotal evidence involves the close examination of particular instances, often including the writer's or the researcher's own experience with whatever he or she is studying. So, for example, a historian wishing to understand the origins and development of the Latino community in a small East Coast American city might use as a large piece or a large part of his or her evidence interviews conducted with local Latino residents. Anecdotal information. In the business world, anecdotal information or anecdotal evidence can be very important. It can be very convincing if the research is done well and if it's to the point. Number 2, authorities as evidence. A common way of establishing support for a claim is to invoke an authority, to call in as evidence the thinking of an expert in the subject area you are writing about. The practice of invoking authorities as evidence can be heard in TV advertising, where you hear some things like, 3 out of 4 doctors recommend. This is authorities as evidence. You can also find them in scholarly books and in articles, in which a writer may offer as partial support for a claim the thinking of a better-known writer or a better-known critic. A lot of business writing consists of evaluating and revising views that people have come to believe are authoritative. The building of knowledge involves in large part the ongoing consideration of who or what will be accepted as authoritative. In the business world, you're going to find yourself in letters and emails, in reports, challenging authorities, challenging authoritative evidence, evidence that's been established by prior experts or by prior researchers or by prior salespeople. This may be part of your job, is to undermine certain authoritative evidence. So, number 3. Grab my notes here. Empirical evidence. Empirical evidence is derived from experience, the result of observation and experiment, as opposed to theory. It is usually associated with the bodily senses. The word empirical means capable of being observed, available to the senses. The word comes from the Greek word for experience. Evidence from the sciences, for example, is heavily empirical. The scientific method is all about how to look at and evaluate physical evidence. All right. Fourth one, experimental evidence. Experimental evidence is a form of empirical evidence which is capable of being observed, right? It is distinguished from other forms of evidence by the careful attention to procedure that it requires. Careful attention to procedure that it requires. Evidence in the sciences is usually recorded in a particular predetermined format, both because methodology is important and because the primary test of validity in the sciences is that the experience or the experiment must be repeatable, which means that another scientist that comes along must be able to go through the same process and get the same result. All right? Experimental evidence. Fifth one, textual evidence. All 5 of the examples that I've given you so far are in some sense textual. You can argue that. They consist of words on the page, right? I am using the term textual evidence to designate instances, however, in the language itself as of fundamental importance. With textual evidence, the key emphasis lies on how things are worded. A primary assumption in analyzing textual evidence is that the meaning of words are never simple or unambiguous. That's the key thing for textual analysis, that nothing is simple, nothing is unambiguous, everything must be interpreted. With textual evidence, then, we interpret the text, and then we argue for that interpretation. The text means this. it means this, and I'm reading it in this way because of this evidence, because of this contextual evidence, because of this anecdotal evidence, because of this other research. We're reading the text in this way, understanding it in this way, and we argue for that interpretation. That's textual evidence. And those are 5 different types of evidences.